Hello my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today we're talking about a brand new palette from Coastal Scents. It's the Fairy Fuchsia palette. I am going to show you swatches and an eye look with this palette. I'm wearing it on my eyes right now, so if you wait to the end of the video, I'll show you how I got this look. But before we get into the swatches, I just want to give you a little bit of info about the palette. It retails for $12.95 and you can find it on the Coastal Scents website. This is the outer packaging, just like a shiny cardboard box, and it's really bright, really colorful, great summer colors. The palette itself has the same print, and it's a more matte kind of cardboard. It does have a magnetic closure, but there is no mirror inside, just more of that pretty butterfly print. There are 12 eyeshadow shades, 6 are matte and 6 are shimmers. The back of the outer packaging indicates that this palette is cruelty-free and paraben-free. It also says that the shadows can be applied dry for a subtle look or wet for a more intense look. So when I do my swatches, I will do a foiled swatch. I'll use some Fix Plus for the shimmer shades. As usual, when I swatch, I'll do both a finger and a brush swatch. I'll be using my e.l.f. flat shader brush for the brush swatches, and I'll clean off in between with my Mona color switch. These shadows do not have shade names. As you can see, there are no shade names printed inside or on the back. So I'm just gonna start on the top row and we'll do top, middle, and bottom rows. Here we have the first row of swatches, and these shades are pretty light. They're pretty close to my skin tone, so it's a little bit difficult to see. This first one here is just a really pale, kind of peachy matte. Next we have a nice gold shade. On top are the finger swatches and below are the brush swatches. And then for the shimmer shades, I have them kind of in the middle for the foiled swatch. So this is foiled, really bright. Then next we have this kind of pale pinky shade, almost lavender. And then here's a silver, almost a pinky silver, I think. And then of course a foiled swatch here. So as you can see, the foiled swatches, when they're sprayed with Fix Plus, are much brighter. We're on to the middle row, and these have more of the medium tone shadows. Again, on top are the finger swatches, below are brush swatches, and then in the middle we have the foiled swatches for the shimmer shades. The first two are mattes, and the very first one is a kind of rosy toned, almost mauve-y shadow. And then next to it is a medium warm brown. Then there is this bright pinky purple. And lastly, a more kind of cool toned bluish purple. And look how intense these become when they're foiled. I mean, that's all the same shadow, just applied 3 different ways. This is the very last row in the palette. It has all the deepest shades. The first 2 are shimmers, so the finger swatches on top, brush swatches on bottom, and then these 2 are the foiled swatches. And I think these 2 shades are pretty similar. I think they look more similar on camera than they do in person, but this one's just kind of like a deeper version of this. This is a silvery taupe, and this is a more like smoky taupe, if that makes any sense. And once they're foiled, they look pretty similar, just this one's a little bit darker. The last 2 shades are a deep brown and a black. These are both mattes. And I am so surprised by this matte black. Affordable palettes usually have pretty crummy matte black shades, but this one is really, not only is it really pigmented, but it's really smooth. It doesn't look super choppy. So that's the very last row in the palette. Now that we're done with the swatches, I'm just gonna give you kind of my initial thoughts on this palette. Like I said, it's brand new. I just got it yesterday, so I can't really speak to wear time and things like that, but just my initial thoughts. I am pretty impressed, especially with the mattes and with the shimmers when they're foiled. I think this would be a great palette for beginners because it is pretty versatile in that you can make the shades more subtle or you can build them up, so it's not going to be so pigmented that it's really intimidating to somebody who's just starting off experimenting with eyeshadow. I was particularly impressed with the mattes in this palette because in my experience, more affordable palettes tend to have kind of lackluster mattes, but these were really blendable, easy to work with, and although they aren't the most pigmented eyeshadows in the world, I did find them to go on very smoothly and not chunky or choppy like I've seen from a lot of more affordable matte shadows. I really like the packaging. I like the size of this palette. It's slim, it would be easy to travel with, easy to store, and of course it's really pretty, which I love in my packaging. I think my main complaint about this palette is there's not a fuchsia shade, and it's called Fairy Fuchsia. So I was expecting to see at least one like bright pop of color here, a really bright fuchsia, maybe a bright pink, and this just, you know, this is a great neutral palette. It does tend to lean towards the cool tones, and I'm just kind of, I guess, confused by the name Fairy Fuchsia, not really seeing a fuchsia shadow. There is that one bright kind of pinky purple. I don't think I would call this a fuchsia, but that's just me. Overall, I'm really impressed with this $13 palette. I do need to keep playing with it more, use it a few more times before I can give a full review, but if you want to see this palette in action, I'm going to show you how I got this eye look, so just keep watching. I'm starting off priming my eyes with my MAC Painterly Paint Pot as usual, and I want to see what this palette can do based on the claims. So I'm going to apply my eyeshadow look with completely dry shadows, and then I'm going to go back and add some foiled shades on top just so we can see the subtle and the intense looks. I'm going to use the first light matte shade in the palette to set my primer. That way I have a nice smooth surface when I start applying my eyeshadows. I'm going to apply my transition shade now, and I was really drawn towards this rosy mauve-y shade. So I'm just using my ColourPop blending brush and applying that all over my crease, not really being too precise with it. Now I'm going to add some color. I'm taking the pinky purple, the lighter purple from the palette, and I'm applying that all over the outer part of my lid, probably the outer 2/3. And then I'm kind of blending that into my crease as well. This is going to be the main pop of color in this eye look. No, it does not look like a pop of color now, but trust me, once we add some Fix Plus, it'll be much more intense. Before we get to that, I'm going to add some of the silver shade to my lid. I'm using a flat, dense packing brush, and I'm patting that all over the inner part of my lid and just sort of gently blending that into the brighter purple color so that we have a nice transition there. Here's what the shadows look like just applied dry. I think it's really pretty, but of course we need to kick it up a notch, so I'm going back into that lighter purple shade and spraying some Fix Plus onto my brush before I apply it to my eye. And as you can see, the color looks much brighter, much more intense, and I think maybe a little bit more fuchsia when you foil the shadow. So I'm tapping that onto my eye. I'm not really dragging the wet brush because I don't want to pull up the color underneath. So I'm just tapping that onto my eye and depositing the color that way. Then I'm going to apply the silver shade again. This time I'm using my finger instead of a brush just to sort of see what this palette can do with a bunch of different application methods. And I think applied with the finger, it's not quite as intense as when it's foiled with Fix Plus, but I think this gives a really pretty kind of medium intensity finish to the eyeshadow. Now that my lid colors are finished, I'm going back into that rosy shade that I used in my crease and just blending out that transition to make sure everything's nice and smooth and I don't have any harsh edges. That'll work. Now I'm taking the warm matte brown from the middle row on the palette, and I'm just putting that on a little tiny flat brush and smudging along my lower lash line. Nothing too crazy, just giving a little balance to the look. And of course I need an inner corner highlight, so I'm using the silver shade on a little tiny detail brush and brushing that all around the inner corner of my eye. And lastly, taking that lightest matte shade from the palette and just brushing that along my brow bone to highlight and to make sure that the transition shade blends out and fades really smoothly. Of course, I'm going to curl my eyelashes and add some mascara to the top and bottom lashes. I'm still loving my Pure Fully Charged mascara. And that's it for this super easy eye look. I think this turned out so pretty. This is definitely something that I would wear for every day. That wraps up today's video. I really want to know what your favorite affordable palettes are. Make sure you leave a comment so that we can all go check them out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Get myself sorted out here. Coffee before we start. Lip stayed on. So, wait, what do I want to say here? Okay. You already said that. This palette is, I was particularly typical. Okay, you got this. You got this. You can do it. What? You do the outro palette, because I can't.